resident productivity and time management expert who wants to help working moms find more time and energy in your lives and more joy in your lives with that time and energy. It is Thursday. I'm not showing up at my usual time because I have been having microphone issues all day. This is my third time trying to do my podcast. So if catch this on the replay as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. This will be episode 141. And you might be wondering why my friend Christine isn't with me because originally we were supposed to be talking about long term relationships, all kinds of relationships, romantic, friends, whatever, the things we've learned having a 40 plus year friendship, and also, when you might want to let a long term relationship go. However, she is sick. So I had to pivot and I've been thinking about the next few months. Life is crazy right now. Uh, the world is a lot. And one thing that I've been doing in order to not feel powerless is to call my representatives using fivecalls.org. That's five, the number five, calls.org. I will put it in the show notes. They give you tips, they give you the numbers. There is a big bill on the floor right now up for vote. It was passed by the House of Representatives last week. It is up with the Senate right now, all about funding for DHS. So, if you are not pleased with what is happening in the country right now, call, call, call. It does make a difference, and action is the best way I know to get out of anxiety mode. The brain science shows, when you're in anxiety mode, you're in your amygdala. When you take action, you move into your non-emotional part, your thinking part of your brain, and that makes a difference to how you feel because now you're doing something. So please make that call. So I'm going to have my friend on in the future, but because life has been nutty right now, I've really been leaning into my self-care because I once heard a story about a mom who, when she found out her son had cancer, she knew she had to be impeccable with her diet and her sleep and her exercise so that she could have the bandwidth, the energy to show up the way she wanted to for her son. And so right now, when things are a little challenging, it's more important than ever to make sure you're taking care of yourself, so you aren't feeling tired on top of all of that, so you don't get to burnout. I was burnt out. I've been burnt out 2.5 times in my life. The first time, asked to go to the hospital. The second time, I was bedridden for 3 months. The third time, I walked up to the edge of being burnt out and said, "Oh, I remember this," and I walked myself back with my self-care practices. So, what my hope is for you is that in the next few months, as I'm talking about all these different elements of self-care that have helped me, you are able to find the nugget that's gonna help you move your self-care practice forward. Because if a topic's interesting to you, go deep. This week I attended a storytelling workshop with someone who I'd never taught by before, but I've done a lot of storytelling. I've read a lot of books on storytelling. I've attended workshops. I have essentially a PhD in public speaking and writing speeches and stories. Uh, I'm a distinguished Toastmaster, which takes 5 years to at least 5 years to attain through Toastmasters International. So I know a lot about this, but it also interests me, which is why I went back for another nugget. So I'm gonna be talking about self-care for the next few months. My hope is that you can dip in and find a nugget wherever it may be, 'cause that's all you need to make a change in your life. And before I get into that, I'm just gonna do a couple other housekeeping things that I like to do. I wanna say welcome to all my listeners from the over 90 countries that I'm heard in. I have been doing fun facts from each of these countries because I wanna learn more about you. And so this week's country is the United Kingdom, which, as you might know, is made up of multiple countries, and one of those countries includes Scotland, whose mascot is the unicorn, which I think is such a fun fact. Another fun fact is that the sovereign, the monarch of the United Kingdom, is not required to use a passport to travel because they are on the passports for everyone else. So I guess one assumes that if you're issuing the passports, you don't need a passport. Although all the other family members of the royal family do have to have passports. Another interesting fact is that the pillars in Stonehenge are older, they're 5,000 years old, they're older than the pyramids of Egypt. So thank you for joining me from the United Kingdom. I will be sharing facts about the other countries, and if you're joining me live, feel free to ask questions. I do see them in the chat, and even if you're listening to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, which this will go up as episode 141, I will see your comments, and I will get back to them. It might just take a little bit longer. So thank you for joining me. Um, I've been reading a book. I just finished it actually today called Awake by Jen Hatmaker. I'd really like to recommend it to anyone who feeling like things in their lives are making sense. It opens with 2:30 in the morning, and she hears her husband of 26 years voice texting into his phone, "I can't quit you." It follows the year of her putting her life back together, and these events happened in 2020, so she's had a lot of distance between the recovery and now, and it was such a surprising book because it's not just about marriage, it's also about falling in love with yourself, body and soul. It's about deprogramming yourself from messages that no longer serve you. It's a wonderful memoir, and I highly recommend it, and I'm gonna talk about it a little bit more, I think, as I get going because, as I said, this is take 3, and in the other 2 takes, I also talked about it. But before I go, I do wanna before we get started with the topic, I do wanna pick the card that came up today, "Speak the truth, even if your voice shakes." Uh, there is a lot of truth to be spoken these days, and if you follow me, then you know that I do stand-up comedy, and I had a show this Sunday, and I ended the show on a serious note because in serious times, I live in the city of my birth, the city of my father's birth, and I'm carrying my passport. That's just not right. And I ended with these words, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And it is always the right time to do the right thing, and you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step." Words of Martin Luther King. He didn't say them in that order, but that's how I put it together, and if your first step today is calling 5calls.org by checking 5calls.org, that's the number 5, calls.org, and making calls to your reps, that's a great first step. It takes less than 2 minutes. Tell your friends, tell your family. Everyone needs to be calling. It does make a difference. And speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. Okay, so when life is crazy, you gotta lean in to self-care. And I have learned this in my life, having been, so sick, I asked to be taken to the hospital, having been bedridden for 3 months. I know the power of self-care. And self-care is also a process of learning to love yourself, learning to say, "I am worthy of being taken care of. I am worthy of being my first priority." And so, I'm gonna go really deep in the next few months, and I'm going to start with skincare because skincare is actually a self-care practice that at first I wouldn't have called it self-care because skincare seems like it's all about vanity. However, there's some amazing brain science that shows that when you touch yourself, that's right, just putting on skincare, hugging yourself, even high-fiving yourself, it is great for your brain. It makes you feel so good, and I can tell you that my skincare routine makes me feel loved and nurtured, and who doesn't wanna start the day feeling loved and nurtured, and who doesn't wanna end the day feeling loved and nurtured? We should all wanna feel loved and nurtured because every single one of us deserves to be loved and nurtured, even the people doing horrible things, which honestly, it's why I think they're doing horrible things because they don't feel loved and nurtured. We all deserve to be loved and nurtured. So I'm gonna talk about skincare, which you might not think is a way to love and nurture yourself, but it can be by finding the right ritual. For me, that includes music and a candle and scents and pretty glass bottles. By setting the stage, it can be such a beautiful experience. For me, it's honestly my meditation. And look, every day is different. If I'm in a hurry, I can do my morning routine in 5 minutes. I can do my evening routine in 8 minutes. However, sometimes I do stretch it out to 15 or 20 minutes because I'm just enjoying the process and letting it wash over me, and it's such a great way to start the day. So, here is what my season of self-care looks like. I'm gonna talk about skincare first, then I'm gonna talk about diet and supplements, then I'm gonna talk about movement, especially walking and fascia work because those are the cornerstones of my movement. And then I'm gonna talk about friends and how keeping up with them is really the ultimate form of self-care. And just to lay out the next few weeks, I have created a little handout. You go to subscribepage.com/7 steps. You can go get it now in advance because, I know some of you learn best by reading, some of you learn best by listening, some of you learn best by watching. I wanna give you a little head start because it's a whole page of text. There's a lot to read there if you wanna read it. But next week, I'm gonna talk about that. And that handout is called The 7 Steps to Glowing Skin for Women Over 40. 7 steps, let me tell you, it's not minimal, but it is effective. I think when most of us think of skincare, we think of washing, maybe toning, moisturizing, and sunscreen. That's it. However, there are some steps in there, 2 steps in particular that might surprise you because you might not be doing them at all, and I'm gonna talk about these steps at great length and the role they play, not just in the skincare part, but also in the self-care part. The week after that, I'm going to talk at length about the products I use. I only use clean beauty products. There are about a dozen chemicals that I do not allow on my face, in my body, in any of my family's products, and I'm gonna show you exactly what I use. I use about 6 or 7 different lines, so I like to mix and match, and I'll tell you why I don't just use 1 line. And we might not be here when we do this podcast. We might actually be in my bedroom because it's so much stuff. I just don't know if I can bring it over here. So we'll see. Then the week after that, I'm gonna talk about how I built my skincare ritual because it didn't happen overnight. I literally used to be a wash myself, put on 1 product kinda gal. I didn't even wear sunscreen until I hit 40. I didn't know I needed to wear sunscreen until I hit 40. We'll talk about all those things. Then the week after that, I'm gonna do my full AM ritual, and then next week, I'm gonna do my full PM ritual, which they're slightly different. Then I'm gonna get into diet and supplements. I'm gonna talk about my AM hydration ritual, which includes these are 2 parts of my hydration ritual. I'm gonna talk about all the supplements I take, which is something I've only really been doing in the last 6 years, and I might add in a diet one, just talking about some of the meals that I eat on repeat because very I eat the same thing over and over again. It just makes my life really easy, and it makes sure I am nourished. I'm gonna talk about movement, weighted vests. I'm a huge fan. I've been wearing a weighted vest for a number of years now. A year and a half ago, I built up, I should say. I built up from a 20-pound weighted vest to a 40-pound weighted vest. I will talk about that and how I do that, both when I'm hiking on the trails and when I'm just walking in my neighborhood. Then I get to talk about fascia, which I am obsessed with fascia. If you don't know what fascia is, I am so excited to share it with you because it has made a huge difference in making my body function properly. I didn't know about fascia until about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. However, remember when I told you I was burnt out and I was bedridden for 3 months? I now know that was a fascia issue, which is why I spend some time every day working on all the fascia of my body from literally the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. So I'm gonna talk about fascia. I'm gonna give you some videos that you can check out to help you educate about fascia. Let me tell you, in 10 to 20 years, people are gonna be talking about fascia, like, now weighted vest fascia for for health, for pain management. And again, I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV, but I am 52, and this is what has helped me. And I'm even gonna show you all my fascia tools, which There are a lot of them. I think about a dozen. I can't believe it, and I didn't acquire them overnight. It was, one at a time. I'm gonna tell you how I used all of them, what they all do, and then after that, we're gonna go into friends as self-care, and so you see, I have a whole multi-month layout for us, and again, if you just get one nugget from each of these podcasts, I feel that there's something for everyone in terms of trying something new with your self-care ritual. And if you don't have a self-care ritual at all, then hey, listen to a season of self-care and see where you wanna start. I do not encourage you to do everything at once because that is pretty much a recipe for not continuing because you're gonna feel overwhelmed. Your brain is gonna say, "Nope, I don't wanna do all these things," because our brains are designed to conserve energy. So really, the key to starting a self-care ritual is start small. Just do a little thing so that your brain doesn't try and hijack you and say, "Nope, you can't do that." And actually, I do have a thing. If you go to my website, bywdreams.com, I do have a thing on if you go to blog and look at Fresh Start Effect, if you're the sort of person who's like, I know what I need to do, I'm just having trouble getting started." I got you. Go to BYW Dreams, look up blog, look for Fresh Start Effect. I have a method to help you trick your brain into letting you do these things that are good for you. I know it seems counterintuitive that your brain doesn't always wanna support you in this journey, but you have to remember our brains are designed to save calories because we are feast or famine animals. Our brains are always saying, "When's the next famine? Oh, I can save calories here, save calories here." This is why humans tend to be kind of lazy. And the fresh start effect is a way of tricking yourself into doing something new. I often when I'm doing my coaching, my in-person presentations, I often end by saying, "Look, life is a game played on a playing field that starts here at your left temple and ends here at your right temple." So much of life is just figuring out how your brain works, how to make it do the things you wanna do. So if you are ready to get started on a self-care journey, but you have trouble getting started, the fresh start effect will really help you. And at the end of this whole season of self-care that I'm gonna do in the next few months, I will go through the fresh start effect again. In fact, I'm just gonna write that down so that you all can then take whatever nugget you have learned and apply it. So don't feel pressured to do anything with this information that I'm giving you. Just take it in and see what speaks to you. All you need is a nugget to start on the next stage of your personal transformation. Thank you for joining me. If you wanna learn more, go to subscribepage.com/7steps. That's where you can get the 7 steps for glowing skin for women over 40. That's gonna be the first podcast I'm gonna talk about next week. And also, if you're ever interested in working with me one-on-one, that is a possibility. If you go to my website, you'll see there's a place where you can book a 30-minute call with me, and we can talk about what it is that I can support you with in terms of your, productivity, time management, self-care journey. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment wherever you are. It costs you nothing, but it helps raise the visibility of my podcast. And thank you for joining me. Remember, planning